I think there have been a lot of people that have been pretty frustrated that we haven't seen a 2017 style resistance movement like we saw in Trump's first term. But because things are getting so bad so quickly in this second Trump administration, I think the American people are actually starting to wake up. We are starting to see these grassroots movements popping up all over the country to protest against their issue of choice. And I think it's super important that we point out and highlight these movements because even though it might not feel like it sometimes, we still live in the United States. We have the luxury of living in a country that still has the protections of the First Amendment. We still have a court system that seems to be doing its job pretty well so far. And I know that this could change with this authoritarian regime currently in office, but as of now, we still have these things that we can count on. So if there is an issue of choice that you feel compelled to protest for or get out there and organize for, I definitely think you should do it. We should all get out there and push back against this authoritarian takeover. So I wanted to take a look at a few of these protests movements all over the country. This one in particular is about the national parks and how Donald Trump is defunding a lot of this and people are losing their jobs. And if you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
Then there's also what happened in the national parks this weekend. Check this out. This was in Yosemite National Park in California, also on the edge of the Grand Canyon in Arizona, at the St. Louis Arch in Missouri, at Bar Harbor, Maine, just outside Acadia National Park. There were Save Our Parks protests at more than 100 different national parks all over the country this weekend, protesting the firing of parks employees by the Trump White House. And when I say it was all over the country, I mean it. They were really all over the place. This was Denali National Park in Alaska, the Arches National Park in Utah, Valley Forge National Historic Park in Pennsylvania. Those folks standing out in the snow were protesting at the Indiana Dunes National Park. This was outside Rocky Mountain National Park in northern Colorado. People lined up on the side of the road holding Save Our Parks signs so people could see them on their drive into the park. Because of the firing of park staff by Donald Trump, the staff at Rocky Mountain National Park has announced that they are not going to be able to keep that park open this summer. They will not have enough people. That is the 5th most visited national park in the entire country. They say they will be closed this summer because of Trump's firing their staff.
Isn't that insane? National parks all around the country are being impacted by this incompetent Trump administration because they're just randomly pulling funding or firing tens of thousands of employees. So when your family goes to take a trip or a vacation this year and you want to visit one of the national parks in the area that you're going to, you very well might not be able to get in. Or at the very least, you're going to have reduced staff, and so you might be contending with miles-long lines. Because this Trump administration doesn't seem to care at all about regular Americans. He doesn't seem to realize that federal workers are employed all over the country and that their lives are being impacted by what Doge and the idiots in the Trump administration are doing. Here's another protest that was taking place right before the State of the Union address.
Very brave people, very relentless and brave people protesting, engaging in civil disobedience. People are willing to be arrested if necessary. It's also people peacefully protesting in the streets. Look, this was Boise, Idaho yesterday. This is at the capital of one of the most conservative states in the country. This is Boise, Idaho. People protesting against Trump in the lead up to his State of the Union address last night. This was Phoenix, Arizona yesterday. Another big crowd protesting at their state capitol ahead of Trump's speech last night. Look at the numbers that turned out yesterday in Utah, in Salt Lake City, Utah. Look at this. Utah, bright red Utah. Look at the people who turned out in Little Corning, New York, and in Bakersfield, California, and in West Hartford, Connecticut, and outside the office of the Office of Personnel Management in Washington, D.C. Pushback takes all forms.
It's amazing to me, like in many of those different shots that we just watched, how there is so much pushback and protest in these super deep red states. We saw Idaho on there, Utah. The American people are not happy with what their government is doing, even in deep red states. And at the beginning of that clip, it showed people getting arrested. And I just want to reiterate this. Civil disobedience is fine, but make sure you are doing your research so you can do it appropriately. Talk to an organizer who has been involved in these types of movements before. Do not go out and commit violence. Do not go out and get rowdy. The last thing we need is for this Trump administration to have any excuse at all to start shooting people in the legs like he purportedly wanted to do in his first administration. So if you're going to come out, do it peacefully, organize with others, do it right. We do not want to turn this into a martial law type situation because this authoritarian regime would like nothing more for than that to happen. Here's the other protests that were happening on Women's Day, or the Women's Day protests.
A sunny Saturday in St. Paul, filled with the shouts and speeches of protesters.
This is what America is, and we're standing against fascism.
Across America and the world, similar protests like this calling for equal pay, reproductive rights, and equality.
Equal rights for all of us, for all.
International Women's Day is marked around the globe and was officially recognized by the United Nations in 1977. Despite nearly 50 years of protests, those at the march on Saturday say there's more work to be done.
This is supposed to be a country for everyone, where we all get to be who we are and have freedom of expression, and they're trying to decide who can get what for health care.
Yeah, and she's exactly right. Just think of how insane it is that we are now living in a country where the women of today are living with fewer rights than what their grandparents or their parents had. Because the conservative movement and the MAGA movement in this country are trying to take away rights from people in this country. I mean, this is a hallmark of authoritarian regimes or fascist takeovers. They try to roll back rights for others who do not align with them. But these Women's Day protests were taking place all over the country in huge, huge numbers. Pop onto YouTube and you can see these protests happening in almost every city. Here's another one for Stand Up for Science that was in Washington, D.C.
The biggest protest today was in Washington, D.C. Literally thousands of people turned out to stand up for science and protest against Trump today. Really big turnout in Washington. Signs there include these. Science is not a liberal conspiracy. Fund science, save lives. Doge doesn't pass peer review. Also this one, very simply, cancer is not a partisan issue. This is a nice subtle one. Hello, Health and Human Services Secretary. Quote, science prevents brain worms.
I love this sign. And if I had to rate everything, I checked out the science protests, the Stand Up for Science protests, and I think they probably have some of the most creative signs. If you want to get on and poke around, they did have some pretty good ones. But I am just loving that we are seeing this energy all over the country. And you can see that there are different topics or different issues that people are rallying behind. So there are movements all over that you can get involved with. And you might think that these protests have no meaning, they don't see any real outcomes, but I think you would be wrong. And like we talked about in the Tesla Takedown video, you don't know who you're going to inspire to stand up to do the right thing. So maybe somebody who's working in government. Maybe there's somebody in the Trump administration who just needs to see hundreds or thousands of people rallying against this administration to give them the courage to stand up against something shitty that the Trump administration wants to do. Might be a judge who has a ruling on her desk or his desk trying to make the right call, but might be a little bit fearful from this administration. Maybe she or he sees the protest all across the country, and that gives them the courage to rule in the way that they should rule. We just never know how these things are going to manifest. And even for the town halls that we have seen pop up all across the country, we are seeing even people like Rich McCormick starting to soften his tune a little bit after his ass got chewed in his town hall.
question. What are you doing right now to support those that you heard from in that town hall that are suffering right now from these cuts?
We're having discussions on how we implement our changes. You know, we haven't codified this in law. The things that the DOJ is doing, that the president is doing by executive order, he's actually trying to be more deliberate, the president is. And he's actually told Elon Musk that. And I want to make sure that we're deliberate as well in Congress when it comes to this new budget, when we talk to reconciliation, and when we talk about the programs down the way that have to be fixed before they go bankrupt. I think we have to be very deliberate, realize that if you do it too quickly, it can cause real harm. And we always had a saying in the military, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. In other words, be deliberate, be thoughtful, and adjust as you go.
There you go. That should be SOP across the board. Congress.
Yeah, that is a complete different tone than what we saw in his town hall. He was basically preaching at his town hall gatherers, trying to compare them to the January 6th rioters and trying to say that, oh, it was actually Biden that we were fearful of a tyrannical takeover. I mean, this is completely different. Now he's saying that we need to be compassionate, we need to slow down and do this in a way that makes sense. It may not be where you want him to be, but he is definitely taking these town halls and he's kind of internalizing it at least a little bit, and now he is softening his tune. This is exactly the type of thing that we want to see from our elected officials. If they get their ass chewed out in a town hall, they might want to start to reevaluate what they are actually doing. And even with the Trump administration, we have Elon Musk being told to back down a little bit.
Today, we're following a few changes to Elon Musk's DOJ. It was late yesterday that President Trump met with his cabinet and told them that they would be in charge of staffing decisions, not Elon Musk. He was actually quoted as saying he preferred cuts done with a scalpel, not a hatchet. Now, the meeting follows a report from the New York Times that's out today. It detailed an Oval Office argument between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Musk over the size of the State Department.
So now Elon Musk is having some of his power pulled back, at least for now, from Donald Trump himself. And if we know anything about Donny Boy, it's that he likes the validation of others. He likes to be liked. And if he sees thousands of us protesting against some of the excesses of this Trump administration, he very well might turn the other way, might do something a little bit different. Now, is that something that we can count on with this authoritarian regime? I don't think so. But like I was saying before, you don't know who your protests are going to inspire. You don't know about that judge who's got a decision to be written and sees your protest and, gets the courage to write it the right way. It might be, somebody in the actual Trump administration who stands up to some of the unlawful bullshit that this administration is trying to do. So it is definitely important. We have the luxury of being in the United States. We have the protections of our First Amendment. And if you feel compelled to get out there and protest, I definitely think you should. It's going to not only put you in close or contact with other people, but you can find organizers there. You can find other issues that you can help with. You can get involved with mutual aid. It's a really great way to also establish a sense of community in your local area. So these are great things all the way around, and coming together and pushing back against this authoritarian takeover is the right thing to do in this moment. We need these on a broad level, and we need thousands upon thousands of people to show up and stand up for this democracy. That is what this moment calls for, and that is what you and I can do to stand up for this country. So I will leave it there for now, guys. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We've got to build something here on the left that can adequately push back against this right-wing media ecosystem that just shovels shit for Trump every single day. So if you do like what I do here, please do remember to subscribe. If you want to see the Tesla Takedown protests and how they are starting to pop up all over the country as well, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.